Right, good. Hi, Amy. Good afternoon. No, good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi. And hello, Jonathan. How are you today, everyone? I hope you're good.
Larry, I'm good, thank you, and good afternoon, good evening to everybody.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Fantastic. Yeah, we just need to, take a little time to wait for some of our delegates. Very good number here, Jonathan. We have about 40 delegates now with us on this online webinar. This is another series of our Nigerian IFE branch webinar that we normally put together in the interest of members. We will bring relevant speaker to touch very important topics that will help member to grow, whether in their career or be professional wise. So today we are holding another online meeting for both members and non-member. And I'm very pleased to welcome over 45 delegates here. And today we will be touching on the point-based system, looking at the UK skilled worker visa. Particularly, we will be looking at the relevance of this visa scheme for professionals who are based abroad. Just to quickly set some background, the Institute of Financial Accountant in the UK was established in 1916. It's an internationally recognized professional accountancy body, which is a full member of the IFAC. And I'm very pleased to also have here the director of the manager business development here, Jonathan Barber. Jonathan will also co-host this event with me. And also our guest speaker today is Amy Smith. Amy Smith is an immigration lawyer at level 3, working with a UK-based immigration firm, Westkin and Associate. I'll leave Amy to do further introduction, and without further ado, to go straight into our slide. Amy, over to you, please.
Thank you, Larry. So hi, everyone. So just to introduce myself, I'm one of the senior associates at Westkin Associates. I've been doing immigration law for almost 9 years now, with particular focus on sort of corporate immigration, which anything from sort of the skilled worker route right the way through to like business visas through to citizenship. So what I've been asked to discuss today is in particular the skilled worker visa, which comes under the points-based system. So I've just got some slides, shouldn't take too much of your time, and then we'll be answering some questions at the end as well. So I'm just going to sort of start with the presentation and hopefully, yeah, it won't sort of take too much. I'm just going to stop the video just so that I can present this. Okay, so as I mentioned, the skilled worker visa comes under the points-based system, and just to give an overview of what I'm going to be going through today. So I'm going to cover what is the skilled worker visa first of all, and then I'm going to be touching on obviously who can sponsor a skilled worker, so more from sort of the company side of things. And then we'll be going into the actual visa side of things, which is for the worker, the employee themselves. So we'll be covering the requirements of the visa, once the visa is granted, what are the conditions of the visa, and then the route to settlement in the UK and sort of family members and what it means sort of if you have family members that want to join you or apply with you initially as well. So let's start with, first of all, what is the skilled worker visa? So it is a work permit for the UK. A lot of people probably know it as the Tier 2 visa, which it was called up until the 1st of January this year when they revamped the route following Brexit. So people are still on the Tier 2 visa, and if they do their extensions, then they're now just going to be given a skilled worker visa. It's essentially the same thing. There's just a few changes that they made, which I think are actually for the better. For example, they lowered the skilled level requirement for the occupation. They removed requirements for the resident labour market test. They've removed the cap. So previously you could only stay on the visa for up to 6 years, but they've now removed that so you can stay on the visa for as long as possible. So what does it do? It allows family members to join you, as I mentioned, and I will be going through that in more detail. It is a route to settlement in the UK, or indefinite leave to remain, or permanent residence. So it's called a various number of things, all means the same thing. And then once you've got settlement in the UK, you can also apply for citizenship if that is of interest. So I'll be going through that as well. And it allows a licensed sponsor to hire migrant workers. So whether you are outside of the UK and you're looking to come to the UK, or if you're in the UK on a different visa category and then you want to get sponsored work, you can switch immigration categories from inside the UK. So now sort of moving on to who can sponsor a skilled worker. So I think there's some people sort of think it has to be a certain type of company or like maybe a certain size of company, but just to sort of give you an overview of the kinds of sponsors that I've worked with. So number one, yes, it's a company registered on Companies House. It doesn't just have to be a limited company. I've dealt with startups. So the Home Office define a startup as somebody, a company or a business within the first 18 months since being registered. I've worked with partnerships. I've worked with UK subsidiaries and branches where their head office or the headquarters is based overseas. Franchises, a registered charity, public body, government department, local authority, and also sole traders as well. So if they're registered as self-employed in the UK, but they're trading and they want to take on employees. So I think an example of that is perhaps like dentists that I've worked with, but it does come up in other sectors as well. So continuing on who can sponsor a skilled worker, this is just an overview of what the Home Office themselves are looking at when they're looking at a sponsor. So they want to see that you are a genuine company that's operating lawfully in the UK. By that, it's just sort of in terms of the supporting documents that they'll ask for. So the things that I would usually ask when I'm sort of speaking to a potential sponsor would be, are you VAT registered? Have you registered for PAYE if you've got staff on your payroll? Have you sort of got relevant insurance policies, employers' liability insurance if you've got staff, or are you looking to get that? If you are required to be regulated by a certain authority, have you got your, are you regulated by them, or is it an application that's in process at the moment? Because this might lead us to sort of mandatory documents that are needed and that the Home Office will ask for when the company are applying for their license. Secondly, they're looking to see that there is a genuine vacancy for the employee that they're looking to hire. So, for example, they'll look at the hierarchy and they want to know, where is this, if you've saying you've got a vacant position, where do they fit within the company's hierarchy? They're looking to see, if it's more than one, do you need that number of, accountants or financial manager, whatever it might be within the organization. They're looking to see that they genuinely do fit within the organization, and they're looking to see how they were recruited. So they're not asking that you have particularly advertised on a certain platform, as previously was required under the Tier 2 visa. But what they're looking to see is, how have you identified this person? Is it genuine? You haven't just manipulated sort of a vacancy in order to meet the immigration rules. They're going to also look to see if the sponsor company themselves are capable of carrying out their duties once they're given a license. When they're looking at this, they're particularly interested in the internal processes that a company have. For example, their HR policies. How is it that the person that's going to be overseeing this sponsorship process, how are they assessing that their staff are turning up for work when they need to? Do they have internal processes? And for a smaller company, it might be something as simple as Excel spreadsheets, or you have to report to a certain person. For bigger organizations, they might have sort of a natural HR platform that they use, for example, People HR, where everybody will have their own login and everything's sort of done quite automatically on the system. And we give advice on all of this to our clients when we're working through them on the process. And finally, they're looking to see that are the company honest, dependable and reliable. So this is determined by them looking at who you have put as the key personnel on the license. And I'll discuss a bit more on the next slide about sort of the people that that they have to nominate to basically be accountable to the Home Office. So we'll move on to that now, and then we'll go through that in a bit more detail. So the most important person when dealing with a sponsoring company is the authorising officer. So this will be a senior and competent person responsible for the actions of the SMS. The SMS is the sponsor management system, which is essentially the license. And everybody that has access to this will have their own user ID and password. And this is where everything is managed. This is the communication between the sponsoring company and the Home Office. So most people that I see sort of have this role. If I'm dealing with a startup or quite a small company, it might just be the registered director. if I'm dealing with perhaps like a medium to larger size company, perhaps it won't be the director. They might give this off to like a HR manager or a HR director if they have like an actual HR department. But this person must be based in the UK in order to manage the process with the Home Office. We then have a level 1 user. So this is the person that would be responsible for day-to-day management of the system. So they will have a user ID and password. Most of the time, this will also be the authorizing officer if I'm dealing with like a smaller company. But you can have multiple level 1 users. So sometimes we might have the authorizing officer who's given the permission for the license, and they might nominate somebody internally that's actually going to do the physical work of logging in, doing all of the updates to the Home Office, assigning the certificates of sponsorship and doing all of the administrative role to that. We have to have at least one settled worker who is a level 1 user, and we have to have at least one level 1 user who is an employee or like a registered person for the company. So usually we'd start with somebody internal, and then if, for example, like Westkin are assisting on the license, then I would sort of just ask that I be added if you see that there'll be future need for me to log in and sort of manage things for our clients. We also have level 2 users. So similar to a level 1 user, but they have less responsibility and less access on the system. So with smaller clients, I don't really see this as being beneficial, but perhaps with larger companies where you've got maybe a HR department and you've got hundreds of employees, you might want to have a couple of level 2 users who are able to just log on and do certain things that aren't as high importance as what a level 1 user needs to do. And then finally, we have a key contact. I would usually perhaps nominate myself as legal representative to be the key contact, or if you want it to again be the authorising officer, they can have a dual role. And this is the person who is notified. So it's your contact between the sponsoring company and the Home Office. So they would get all of the notifications, for example, when you need to renew your licence. If there's sort of any particular changes with the Home Office, they would sort of email the key contact to make sure that they're aware. If you've put any requests in on the system for additional certificates of sponsorship, they would get the decision. So, it's a good, it's good to have sort of your legal representative, because then they can notify you of any decisions. But alternatively, you can have it internally as well. You have those 4 roles. A lot of the time, it might be one person that has, 3 of those roles. So the authorising officer, level 1 user, and key contact. But like I say, you can add other users on and change those as and when is applicable to the organisation as well. This slide just covers sort of, I guess, common questions that I would get, that I think a lot of people maybe have misconceptions of perhaps what a sponsor organisation in the UK needs to have. So I get asked a lot, if we want to apply for a licence and we want to sponsor workers from overseas, do we need to have a minimum number of employees? The answer is no. So many times I deal with sort of startups where I might be talking to a client who has literally just registered their company in the UK, and they're looking to sort of, they'll set up their UK bank account, they'll register with HMRC, they might be getting some office space or something like that. Once they've got all of that in place, a lot of the time we're applying for a license so that their first actual employee is going to be the skilled worker who's coming from overseas. And as long as you can justify that to the Home Office, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to grant the license for that to happen. Also get the question of, do we need to be earning a certain amount of profit or turnover? Do we have to show our financial accounts? Again, no, as I mentioned, I deal with a lot of startup companies, so they won't even have their first year of accounts to be able to show in the application. And the Home Office require no minimum of amount of funds. Obviously, if we're submitting business bank account statements, then I would say, it's good to show that you have enough funds to, cover your normal overheads, but they don't require a specific amount of turnover that you need to have. Another question we get a lot of is, do we have to have physical office space? It used to be frowned upon if you didn't have it, but I would say, especially over the last 18 months with the pandemic, a lot of companies now have actually given up their office space. A lot of people are going to be adapting to sort of working from home and perhaps having virtual offices instead, where they don't need to go into the office every day. So again, as long as you can justify to the Home Office as a sponsor that you can manage your staff, you know what they're doing, and you can comply with your sponsorship duties and your staff can work remotely from home, then it's not a requirement that you need to have office space. And the final question that I get asked probably most commonly is, do we have to show that we've advertised for the position sort of from the local market before we then look to sponsor somebody from overseas? So previously under the tier 2 route, it was a mandatory requirement that you would have to show that you had advertised online, in particularly on the government website, and also on another platform. And it was a very rigid process. So you had to show that you'd included, you know, X, Y, and Z in your advertisement, that you'd taken screenshots of that advert on day one, you know, that it showed the website link, that you had kept all of the CVs that applied, that you'd made notes of all of the interviews, that you'd made reasons as to why you didn't sort of hire a settled worker, as opposed to then deciding to hire, sponsor an overseas worker. That requirement they removed when they changed from tier 2 to skilled worker, just because it wasn't serving the purpose. It was quite easy to sort of do that after you'd already selected someone, and then it was just leading to them to decide that it wasn't necessarily a genuine process to sort of determine if a company needed to have a license. What we do ask, as I mentioned sort of on the left hand side, is that it is a genuine vacancy within the skilled occupation. And I would usually ask a client just to sort of let me know, how did you recruit this person? If it was through a networking event, then if there's correspondence that you can show there, you know, that you met at a networking event, there might be a few emails back and forth, there might be talk of a call that you had where you've then offered the job, you know, we would just include that and keep that on file. If it was somebody that perhaps was on a different visa category that already worked for you, or, you know, somebody had a friend and they put them in touch with you, that's fine because it's through your own connections. If you used a recruitment agent, if you did advertise, then, you know, just keep all of that on file, but it's not as rigid as the resident labour market test used to be. But we would still just include evidence to show that some form of recruitment and assessment was done. Sort of, again, going to the reverse of that, things that I would say that you do need to have, that the company do need to have, is sufficient HR processes, because we need to show that you can comply with your sponsor duties. We do need to have a UK-based person that's going to oversee the sponsorship process. And the Home Office do ask that the company in the UK do have a UK business bank account. And that's usually one of the mandatory documents that I would say to submit, just to show that you've got that. So you can sort of see like the false versus the true there. And it's just common questions that we get about what a company needs to have in order to be able to sponsor somebody from overseas. So now sort of moving on to more the visa side of things. So we've sort of just wanted to give an overview so that you can see from a company perspective what they needed to have. And just to see that it's not necessarily sector specific, you know, you can have small companies, it's not just these large organisations that can get the licence to then sponsor overseas. And the process, you know, it will vary depending on the type of company, and the documents will vary. But, you know, if you were to, you know, Westkin, for example, we would guide you through every stage of that process. So moving on to the visa itself. This is an overview of, I guess, I say a 3-stage process. There's 4 on here, but obviously the end part is that you would start work in the UK. So first of all, you need to have a job offer from a licensed sponsor. So that's, you know, the company having the license itself. Once you know that a particular, you know, company have got that, they would then need to have a certificate of sponsorship that they would get from that online license, and then they would need to assign that to you. The certificate of sponsorship, or COS as we refer to it, is then gives a unique reference number that is needed for the visa application. So the visa application would be submitted. Once that's granted, you then sort of enter the UK and the employment can begin. So an overview of the requirements. So as I mentioned, it is a points-based system application. So, you know, there is a number of points that each applicant would need to show that they have in order to then qualify and be granted a skilled worker visa. So we have mandatory points. So the first one is that you've got a job offer from an approved sponsor. That's 20 points. You then have a job at an appropriate skill level. So an appropriate skill level, there's a whole list of occupation codes that the Home Office have put into the immigration rules. So under the tier 2 route, they would start it off, so the skilled occupation would start at RQF level 6. And that was also, so it's a slightly higher level that they would expect, and there would be a certain list of occupations within that. When they changed to the skilled worker route, skilled worker visa from 1st of January, they've lowered that skill level, so it now sort of goes down to RQF level 3. So it's widened the scope of, you know, the occupations that can now be sponsored under the work visa. So, you know, from before it might have been RQF level 6 would be you're going in at qualified accountant level, like company accountant, something like that, would now go down to perhaps more of a junior role or a mid to like junior level role. And it might be someone that's going in at that level So now they can be sponsored and then work their way up, because part of that role is that they would then eventually qualify. There's a lot of different sectors and a lot of different roles within sectors that are now included in the appropriate skill level. The other mandatory requirement is obviously that the candidate would show that they can speak English at the required level. So the required level here is CEFR level B1, and I'll sort of discuss each requirement in turn, because there are various ways that this requirement can be met. So those are 50 points which are mandatory. We then have the final 20 points which they call tradable points, and I've mentioned their option A to F, so there will be a table coming up where we can just go through what those options are, and that basically relates to the qualification for the role and the type of salary that's required for the role. So there are different options to choose from. The most common one would be option A, but I'll go through the others just so that you can see the difference as well. That's the points-based part of the visa application and the requirements. Then there's just other requirements which aren't always applicable to everyone, but for some sectors, particularly in like the health and education sector, you would need to show that you've got a criminal record certificate. I'll go through that on a later slide. Depending on country of residence and country of application and how long you've been there, applicants might need to do a TB test certificate at an approved medical centre. And then finally, each applicant would have to show that they have adequate maintenance funds that they've held for sort of a minimum period of time, or it can be sponsored by the company itself on the certificate of sponsorship. And I'll go through that in more detail, because there's maintenance requirements for the main applicant, the employee, and then there'll be additional funds required per family member that is applying with them. Okay, so job offer from an approved sponsor. So as we've mentioned, the company needs to have a sponsor license and they appear on the register. So there's a public register for all sponsored companies. If you were to receive a job offer from a company that's not on that, then they would just need to go through the process to get themselves a sponsor license first, before obviously then the visa application and the next stage can continue. And then once the company have the license, they need to have the relevant COS allocation to assign. So for anyone that's applying from outside the UK for entry clearance, they would need to have what's called a defined certificate of sponsorship. And for anybody that is perhaps applying from inside the UK, if they're switching from another category, for example, from like a student visa, or perhaps they're already sponsored and they want to change employment to another company, then the sponsor would need to have what's called an undefined certificate of sponsorship. And the difference in those two terms is just basically how they request for them. But a company can request for that allocation at any point during the year. It's just an undefined certificate of sponsorship allocation is given as a yearly allocation. So a company might ask for like 5 a year and then they can renew them each year. Whereas a defined certificate is sort of, you request one like as and when you need it. So it's just, but they both take literally a matter of days that they can both be allocated to the company. So it's not an overly long process. It can happen quite quickly. Then we sort of the other sort of the requirement in more detail, job at an appropriate skill level. So as I mentioned, the level at the moment is RQF level 3, and it was previously a higher level under the tier 2 visa. So as I said, it's a very long list of occupation codes with various sort of salary requirements under the immigration rules at the moment. Skilled occupations cover all sectors. So a lot of time people say, you know, I work in this sector, can we sponsor? It covers all ranges of roles right away. So I've given an example there. The very top end would be a CEO of a company, you know, and perhaps that's if there's like a branch of an international sort of group of an international organisation might be setting up a branch in the UK. They want to appoint a CEO to come over. And right the way down to at the very bottom of the list, a florist. You know, there's certain skilled occupation now covers such a wide range. It's everything in between that. So whether that is sort of fully qualified professionals, right the way down to those that might be starting out in their career, who are then working towards their full qualification. So especially within sort of this sector, there will now be, it's not just a case of previously where you'd have a stock code that would just cover accountants and like fully qualified accountants. It now goes right the way down to more junior roles within that, where you might sort of get offered a position at RQF level 3. And it's within, you know, within accounts, but you're not fully qualified yet, you're working towards your qualification. Job at an appropriate skill level, obviously it's applicable qualifications and experience as required by the employer for the role. So for that, the Home Office are going to be looking at, if you're asking for this, if you're saying you need this role, the Home Office needs to know that the employer has assessed the candidate to know that they do have the relevant qualifications and experience required for the role. They're not there to tell you what that person needs to have. They are putting that on the employer to say, right, we have a position for this. We need them to have, 2 years minimum experience within this sector. We want them to have like at least graduated, perhaps like a diploma, a degree within the sector. It's for the employer to determine what qualifications and experience is needed for that role, and then for the person that they choose to sponsor to show in their recruitment process that they actually have the qualifications and experience, and all of that is kept on file in the event that the Home Office were to come and do a compliance visit. And then finally, the employee must be paid the appropriate salary rate. So each occupation code will have a minimum salary rate, and then it'll be given, so a gross annual salary rate and then an hourly rate. So depending on what your contracted hours are, we just have to know that if you're going to offer this job, that the person is going to be paid the minimum that the Home Office expects in order to qualify for the visa. So that covers all of the mandatory points. So I'm just going to now go on to the tradable points because it does relate to the salary. So I mentioned earlier that we have option A to F, which we can choose from. The most common one that we'll see will be option A because it's just purely based on the salary. So the Home Office say that the salary needs to equal or exceed both 25,600 per year and the going rate for the occupation code. So a lot of the time the salary is going to be higher than 25,600 per year because the going rate will be higher than that amount. So an example is sort of chartered accountant, but then there are many other job titles that come under this particular code. Requires a gross annual salary of at least 30,000 per year, and that's based on a 39-hour working week. Most commonly we see contracts that are around like 40 hours working week, so it'll be slightly higher than that. But that just gives you an idea of sort of the base. So we would have to calculate that. So it's not just people I think see on the Gov website 25,600, but it's a little bit misleading because you then have to look at the particular occupation code that your job falls under to know actually that it might have to be a little bit higher than that. And then you can see from the other options here. So option B would be if it's a PhD that's relevant to the job role, they would have what's called a going rate, which is 100%. And then, as you can see, option B means that they can be paid 90% of the going rate. Again, option C, PhD in a STEM subject, 80% of the going rate, not really sort of relevant to this sector, but just so that you know how, if you were to see sort of this on the Gov website at all, sort of 90%, 80% to know what you would need to be looking for. Most of the time it's going to be option A. Option D, there is a separate list of occupation codes that's called the shortage occupation list. And that would be usually that's sort of, there's a lot in the tech sector or like engineers. So then they have to be paid, again, it's 80% of the going rate. Option E might be relevant to this sector. It's called new entrant. So if you are a new entrant to the labour market, there are the definition of a new entrant is, or most times if you're under the age of 26 at the date of application, or if you have studied in the UK and you've just graduated from your degree and now you're looking to get sponsored work. If you, in the last 2 years, completed, I think, studies in the UK. So there's 4 or 5 different points there that cover new entrant. But the most common would be if you've just graduated in the UK on a student visa, or if you're under the age of 26 at the date of application, and that can be you applying from outside the UK or inside the UK. And then the final option is if your occupation is within the health or education sector. So you'd have to be, there's a certain list of occupation codes there, but again, not really relevant to this sector. So I would say probably focus on option A. That's the most common scenario that we would see. And maybe on occasion here, option E. So you can sort of get an idea of what the salary requirements are. And those are your tradable points. So we just have to make it clear in the certificate of sponsorship which one of these options that we are applying under. English language requirements, this was one of the mandatory requirements. 3 different ways that this can be met. So you're either a national of a majority English speaking country, and then obviously no extra evidence is needed there. You can rely on a degree. So if you have a degree that is obviously taught in English from the UK at bachelor's level or above, then you just have to show that you completed your UK degree. or if you have a degree that was taught outside of the UK, but it was taught in English, you can rely on that, and then you just have to get additional recognition from ECCTIS. So you basically, there's a UK visa and nationality service that you would need to request, and then they would send you back a statement that says yes, they recognise that it was taught in English at degree level and then meets the minimum requirement. If neither of those apply to you, then you can take an approved English language test at the correct level. So that's level B1, and that would need to cover all 4 components: that's speaking, listening, reading and writing. It's quite a big list. It used to be IELTS, you might have heard of, that the Home Office would accept if you're based outside of the UK, but they did update the list. They have updated the list within the last year, and it now includes, I think, 3 or 4 different test providers. So it just gives a wider range of tests that you can book, where hopefully the availability is a bit more frequent than with the IELTS, which I think for a lot of countries used to sort of maybe be like once a month, so it'd be quite a long wait for the test there. So that's all on the Gov website. There's just, if you type in sort of approved English language test, there is a table and it tells you the tests that are approved, and then you have to make sure that you take it at an approved centre. So there'll be a centre code. You just have to make sure that that is on the list at the time that you take it. Then moving on to sort of the non-points based requirements. So I mentioned earlier the criminal record certificate, not applicable to all sectors, but it's applicable to entry clearance applications only. So for those applications being made from outside the UK, it's applicable to specific occupation codes within the health and education sector. And if it does apply to you, then the certificate must be from relevant authority in the country in which you've been present for at least 12 months or more in the last 10 years before the date of application, or aged 18 or above if you're sort of younger than 28 years old. TB test certificate. So this is dependent on the country of residence at the time of application. If you've been there for 6 months or more at the time of application, so you don't necessarily have to be a national of that country, but if you're a resident there and you've been there for 6 months or more at the time of application, then you would have to get it. There is, for each country that is required, there is a UKVI approved centre with instructions, and the certificate itself is valid for 6 months, and it's required before the visa application is submitted. So I think once you get it, though, you literally get the certificate within 24 hours, 48 hours. So it's not sort of a long document to obtain. If you do need to get it, it can be done sort of last thing once you know that the visa application is definitely going ahead. And that is for all applicants, so including spouses and children as well. And finally, maintenance funds. So this is a mandatory requirement for all applicants. The amount required is for the employee, so for the main applicant, it's £1,270, and that's held for 28 days prior to the date of application. Evidence, you can either show that this has been held in personal funds, so submitting a copy of a bank statement in your name showing that the funds are held, or your sponsor, so the UK sponsor, your employer to be, can certify this by ticking a box on the certificate of sponsorship, and then you won't have to show that you've held the personal funds. For family members, there's different amounts depending on the family members that you've got applying with you. So, 285 additional for partner, 315 for the first child that's applying, and then an extra £200 per additional child that you have applying with you. You can show, so the main applicant can show the funds on behalf of the whole family, or it can be split, if it's all held in perhaps like a spouse's account, there's various ways that it can be shown. But if the sponsor chooses to certify on the certificate of sponsorship and the family members are applying at the same time, then that would cover the whole family. So then just to clarify the actual visa application process, so we start off by having a certificate of sponsorship. So this is something that you obviously would need to have for your visa application. So your sponsor would assign a certificate of sponsorship to an employee, and it's given a unique reference number that needs to be put onto the application form. There's then the application form, so the visa application itself is submitted online, and supporting documents are either uploaded or scanned at a visa application centre. The applicants would then go for a biometrics appointment at the visa application centre, and processing times begin from this date, and it can range anywhere from 5 to 15 working days, depending on if you purchase priority service. Then a decision is received, and a 90-day vignette is stamped into each person's passport that allows the entry into the UK under that route. And upon arrival in the UK, each person would then go to a local post office to collect their biometrics residence permit, which is the actual card that contains the full length of the visa. And obviously then work would begin as per the conditions that have been put on your certificate of sponsorship. Once the visa is granted, and obviously the employees in the UK, then there are certain conditions that are attached to the work visa. So number one is that there's no access to public funds in the UK. Work is permitted only for the job that you're being sponsored for. So all of the job details are put onto the certificate of sponsorship. That is recorded with the Home Office, and you're only eligible to work for that particular job. Supplementary employment is permitted subject to some conditions. So you have to make sure that you're still working for your primary sponsor, but there are some conditions that allow for additional employment to be done. Voluntary work is permitted. Study is permitted, but there's a certain guidance that needs to be followed. So it's called ATAS. So sometimes you need to just seek additional approval depending on the course that you want to study, and obviously make sure that it doesn't interfere with you carrying out your full-time job that you're sponsored for. And for some nationalities, police registration is required as well. So within the first 7 days of getting your BRP card, you would need to go and register with the police and then update them each time you change address, change status, or that, if certain personal details change, you just need to update them and you're given a certificate that they would update that on each time. And then you need to show that in each application afterwards as well. So this is, as I mentioned, a route to settlement in the UK. So I've just given an idea here of the time frame. So settlement, but also citizenship as well. So you start from the very beginning. So you've got your skilled worker visa. You have to complete 5 years on that in order to then be eligible for settlement. There's no sort of accelerated route. You just have to complete the 5 years. So some people apply straight for the 5-year visa. Depends on how the sponsor wants to do it, because the length of the visa is determined by the certificate of sponsorship. So you can apply straight for the 5 years. That's the maximum you can apply for in one go. But the most common one that we see is that you might start with a 3-year visa and then extend for a further 2 years once you're in the UK at the end of that 3-year period. Year 5, obviously, you're then eligible to apply for settlement. So also known as ILR, so indefinite leave to remain. You just have to show, so the employee will just have to show that they are still employed by a licensed sponsor, and the sponsor will have to confirm that that job is in place under those conditions for the foreseeable future. That they are earning an appropriate salary, so as per the occupation code. They are updated sort of maybe every couple of years, sometimes every year. Each time the Home Office do a review, the minimum salary requirement might change, so we just have to check that with each application. And absences from the UK cannot exceed any more than 180 days in any 12-month period. So if you're required to travel for your work, which some jobs require that they might have to travel overseas, the sponsor just has to confirm that in writing, but absences cannot exceed more than 180 days. And then each applicant above the age of 18, so that includes family members as well, will have to complete what's called a Life in the UK test. And all of that has to be done before you can apply. And then once settlement is granted, hold that for 12 months and then you're eligible for citizenship. But it's not mandatory, you can apply for that if you want to. And then there are certain additional residence requirements that have to be met at that stage. So from year 6, they're going back 5 years. And in that 5-year period, absences cannot exceed more than 450 days in the whole 5-year period. And then in addition to that, they're looking at the last 12 months before the date of application, and absences cannot exceed more than 90 within that period. And obviously then looking at good character as well. So even things down to sort of like speeding tickets or sort of parking tickets and things. If somebody was to get a lot of those in a short space of time, that could go against someone's good character. It's different requirements as opposed to the ILR application, because they can afford to be a lot stricter with that. So sort of now discuss sort of the main applicant, as we call them, so the employee / main applicant. And another question we get is, what family members can join in the UK. So the application, this route allows for spouses, civil partners, or unmarried partners. So for an unmarried partner, you have to show that you've been living together in a relationship for at least 2 years prior to the date of application. And any child that is under the age of 18 at the date of application. and that's the date of the initial application. So if your child turns 18 during the course of having the visa, so long as you show that they are not leading an independent life and they are still living with you, then they can continue to apply for extensions and also settlement as well, right the way through. So sometimes we've had situations where a child might be sort of 17 and almost turning 18, so we have to just make sure we file the application before their 18th birthday, and then they are still then with the rest of their family on the route to settlement in the UK. And that is basically the end of my slides. So I think we'll be answering questions at the end, but I think I'm going to hand over to Jonathan now.
Amy, thank you very much indeed. That was an excellent presentation. Thank you very much indeed to that. Larry, I don't know if you want to run through, there are obviously a number of questions. Do you want to run through those one by one, or?
Yeah, I think before we take the question, it is important for you to speak, Jonathan, because the majority of the participants are trying to look at the role of IFE and how IFE can position them to be a better candidate to, achieving the UK employment. So I think I would like you to quickly speak about, what IFE is all about, the level of our qualification and the benefit of becoming a member. Then we quickly take, question.
Okay, no, Larry, not a problem at all. Thank you. The Institute of Financial Accountants are an internationally recognised professional accountancy membership body. When I say recognised and internationally recognised, we are full members of the International Federation of Accountants, IFAC. IFAC are the body that regulates the accountancy sector. They are the global standard bearers and regulators of our profession. The Institute's full membership, we've held that since 2012, 2013. And that puts us at the same table as, for example, in the UK, puts us at the same table as the ACCA or the ICAEW as examples. So that membership that your institute holds provides you as a member with local and international recognition. Your membership is portable. That can be taken from Nigeria to another country of your choice and destination. The Institute, for those who aren't fully aware, are very much focused on supporting members and accounting students who work within an SME, a small and medium enterprise sized organisation, or members run, own, or work within a small or medium sized accountancy practice. So I always describe this as, think about it as a spectrum, the accountancy employment spectrum. At one end of the spectrum, you've got the likes of the big four national, international accountancy practices, KPMG, Deloitte, PwC, etc. Or you've got those large global corporate FTSE or stock market listed organisations. From a UK angle, the likes of HSBC, the likes of British Telecom, British Airways as examples. But at the other end of the spectrum, you have the small and medium enterprises and you have the small and medium-sized accountancy practices. If anybody does their research, you'll find that 95% of global private limited companies are classed as being SME in size. Size is often defined by turnover, number of employees, assets or net assets, etc. So the Institute have a very specific focus. The Institute's education program, IFA Direct, starts at level 4, continues to level 5, and then at the very end misses level 6, but jumps to level 7. So the Institute's education program finishes at level 7. It's a level 7 education program. If anybody needs more detail and information about the education programme, I'm not going to on this platform talk about that in more detail, but if anybody does need more information, please do contact me, Jonathan B at ifa.org.uk. Larry, hopefully, keeping it brief, hopefully that provides an overview or a summary, not only for members, but also for non-members who might be joining us this evening. You're on mute, sir.
Yeah, that was a very good insight and brief background about the Institute. I think it's important to mention that Amy is a level 3 immigration qualified person, and myself and Amy have worked on a number of projects, and I'm very proud of what she's doing and what she can do. So Amy, one of the main questions is that how can your organization help to secure a skilled worker visa, and whether you're able to share your contact. I'll let you speak about that.
Yeah, so we work throughout the whole process. So everything that I've just discussed, I personally, and obviously our firm as well, we can assist throughout that whole process. So working with a company to get their license, working with individuals to get their visas, compliance, even sort of aftercare, so helping with just ongoing compliance extensions, right the way through to settlement. So we help with every processing of every stage of that basically.
Okay.
And I can put in, so if you need to contact to discuss any particular inquiries, then I can put is it easier if I type my email address? So I forgot to put that on the slides.
Yeah, sure, that's fine.
Yeah, I'll just put my email address here, and then, we can, like I said, we provide services, we provide full services, we provide sort of advice only sessions if somebody then wants to go and do it themselves. And we're happy to tailor the service to as and what the client might think that they need.
Sure. I think I can say this openly that myself and Amy, we have, support some SMEs. I've done that on voluntary basis, supporting some companies to get licensed and also helping some people to get job within the SME. And Amy is, the person that leads on that. And on the basis of that, if you are a member of IFA or you would like to join IFA and you will need my guidance in that regards, please do contact me, whether via LinkedIn or send me an email. But I would only like to provide this support for IFA member alone. There is a system in which myself and Amy have used to work in the past, whether helping an employer to get a license or helping someone to get a job, and we had 100% success rate. Let me just say that. So in the thing me and Amy have done in the past have lent itself to 100% success rate. So if you're a member of IFA, just only member, because obviously we have over 78 people here online, and I won't be able to help if you're not an IFA member. If you're a member of IFA, please do contact me, or if you want to join the IFA, let me know. So before we take the other question, Jonathan, can you put up a slide and tell us what we should be expecting from IFA in the coming days, whether be it CPD, International Conference, and also talk about the Global IFA Project?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Larry. If I start with the Institute's Global Project, the Institute currently has or is part of the IPA group. So as a group, we support 42,000 members and students across the globe throughout 50 plus countries. Our aim by 2025 as a group is to support 50,000 members and students across those 50 countries, but in more countries. If we just take Nigeria as an example, working alongside Larry, we have very slowly but surely taken steps to engage with local accounting and finance professionals to very slowly start to build awareness and a presence in Nigeria, and we find and we are attracting interest and new members on a month-by-month basis. One of the things that in the last 16 months with the global pandemic, we've taken our events and we've put them online. It has allowed us to hold a greater number of events globally, but it's also allowed us to focus by country. So Nigeria or Ghana or the United Arab Emirates or Pakistan or India as examples are countries where we operate with international representatives, and we are starting to provide what we believe, and the feedback we're getting, is a greater realm of support to those locally based members. We will continue to do so, and we will continue to engage and take feedback from locally based members to ensure that we are making the right steps to help us and you as individuals grow, and your profile and your presence increase and enhance. The provision of continual professional development or continual professional education is vitally important to us. We appreciate members also need that ongoing CPD so that they are technically capable and up to date. I'm only giving you examples on this page, but as an example, please register for the accounts payable led webinar on the 2nd of September, focused for members in business, in industry, or in practice. It's all about eliminating your accounts payable pay points. I'm jumping about a bit here, but there are still 2 further Nigerian focused webinars on the 21st of October and on the 16th of December. As an example, the UK national branch meetings start again next month after the summer school holiday break in the UK, and there will be a number from September all the way through to the end of the calendar year. If you are looking to register or wanting to find out about the Institute's events, please go to the website and please look at the CPD and the webinar section. The link is there. One of the things that we will be running for the very first time is an international conference online on the 25th of November this year. The pandemic has caused issues, whether you be in the UK, in Nigeria, in South Asia, Southeast Asia, or the Middle East, for example. We are keen to put on an event that is relevant for members and non-members, regardless of where you are in the world. This event, the Institute's International Conference Online, meets those requirements. We will be covering 5 topics that are relevant for SMEs and SMPs, regardless of where you find yourself around the world. Those topics are all about fraud, technology, governance, integrated reporting, and sustainability. You may think I'm biased when saying that we have an excellent speaker lineup. Yes, I probably am. But as one example alone, I talked about IFAC, the International Federation of Accountants, earlier, and the IFAC Chief Executive Officer, a gentleman by the name of Kevin Dancy, is our headline speaker for the 25th of November's event. He will be talking about sustainability and the role an accountant and the accounting profession must take with regards to that specific topic matter. So the subjects are relevant to all. The subjects are relevant if you are operating within an SME-sized organisation, or you work, own or run a smaller to medium-sized accounting practice. Registration link there is there on the website, very easy to find. 6 hours worth of CPD for those that register and attend, and all attendees will be given a CPD attendance certificate. We do encourage your feedback. We do look for you to tell us how we can help you. We go about doing that by holding events like this. So please, if you've got specific questions, whether you be a Nigerian national or whether you be a member anywhere else around the world, please contact myself. For local Nigerian inquiries, comments, feedback, please talk to Larry. Our email addresses are there. We want your feedback. We want to provide you with support. Visit the Institute website, but connect with us as well, whether it be through LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. Larry, I think that's a very brief update from me. I don't want to go on too long, but hopefully it gives people a flavour for what we're doing.
Thank you so much. I mean, before I say my sincere appreciation to Amy, I just want us to quickly look at one very important question, Amy. One of the delegates is asking, which recruitment site do you advise? I know for sure about LinkedIn. I know about cold calling, sending emails to companies and say, do you want me? I know about networking events like this. I also know the possibility that you can phone your families in London and say, look, in your company, do they want to recruit someone? But apart from these ones that I've mentioned, what other things would you add to it, Amy? Just.
I probably would advise what you just said, to be honest. I think LinkedIn, and if there's any particular recruitment, if you're looking, for example, London, if there's any particular recruitment agencies that specialize in this, in your sector, I would just say to look those up. You can probably find them on LinkedIn and reach out directly, or just sort of search for like recruitment agencies that specialize in the area that you're looking for. That is probably like the best thing to do. And then once you register with them, they will then obviously be in touch directly with employers who are looking to take on people as well. That's just, I did see a question come up. That's the one thing we don't do, obviously, is that we aren't part of the recruitment process. It's, you would come to us when you already have a job offer. I think I saw a few questions related to that. So you'd need to have a job offer for then us to be able to assist you sort of moving forward from that.
Larry, can I also add, you mentioned about LinkedIn. Yes, absolutely agree 100% with that. I would also look at a website called GapWeb, GAPWEB, GapWeb. They are an accounting and finance specialist website with a lot of roles that one might find within the UK. From a recruitment company perspective, people might want to search, for example, Michael Page or Hayes as two large-sized UK-based recruiters that have multiple offices, whether it be from the south of England to the north of England. So just to add a little bit more detail there, GapWeb, Michael Page, Hayes, you should find them through any good internet search, I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. I think looking at the interest of delegates and the importance of this topic, I suspect that we would probably have to, continue to have this conversation with Amy, especially, playing our role as, a membership body who has huge interest in the career of our members. And we would also be looking for a way to integrate some of the materials in membership dashboard and also providing additional information. And I would also be in touch with you, Amy, for us to continue to think about what we can put together for, our members globally, because this is not a conference or a webinar that only matters to Nigerian. It's something that has to do with global, and that's the purpose for which the UK government has put this together. So on that note, Amy, I want to say a huge thank you to you on behalf of all the members of the IFE in Nigeria, and of course, globally, for answering our call and for doing this. It's a very powerful slide. I've gone through it, and you've just summarized the immigration law. But of course,
it didn't bore you too much.
Not at all. And I would like to also pass it to Jonathan to add some few words, perhaps from John Edward, who is the CEO of the Institute, to also say one or few words to appreciate you, Amy. Jonathan, over to you.
Yeah, I don't. Well, John Edwards, as all our members should and will know, is the Institute's Chief Executive Officer. John has been our Chief Executive Officer now for I think it's, since 2015, so 5-6 years. And I would hope that our members would feel that your institute has come a long way since John took on the role of Chief Executive Officer. So, maybe I can say thank you on behalf of members for the work that John has done. I think what John would probably say, Larry, if he was alongside Amy and yourself, he would say he welcomes member engagement and feedback. There are many webinars that John does attend, or Zoom meetings that he attends. We as your institute can only get better. We can only improve what we do, the support we provide, the recognition we provide you with from your help and your support. So I think John would say, if you have things that you want to say, engage with us, engage with Larry, engage with myself. If there's a specific question that you have for John, send it to me and I will make sure I send it on to him. But he would also say to all our members who've joined us this evening, wherever you are around the world, he hoped that you were well, and in these still uncertain times to remain well and stay safe. He would also have a message for those who've joined who aren't yet members, and that would be, please contact Larry or myself to find out how you become a member and how you gain benefits from being a member of the Institute of Financial Accountants. I've probably talked a little bit too much there. John would be more succinct, but hopefully it sums it up.
Thank you, Jonathan. In 1 minute, Amy, do you want to say some closing remark? Just, anything?
Yeah, I mean, just happy to, I guess, just to put it out there that we offer services for sort of everyone. So even if it perhaps might not be related to this, like any immigration matter, obviously we're welcome to talk to you. And if I can't personally help, then definitely we'll have a colleague who can. So just, thank you for having me, and look forward to perhaps, working with some of you and providing services in the future.
Thank you so much, Amy. And I trust that when we call on you in future, you will be more than happy to come and answer us quickly.
Of course, yeah. That's what we're here for.
Larry, I'm just sorry, before I close off, and I'm just responding to somebody who'd sent a specific message. Amy, have you, or are you happy to provide your contact details?
Oh, so did I not do? Oh, hang on a minute.
If I've
realised it was just to the panelists, it's not to everyone. I'm happy to. It's just I'll give my email, and obviously happy to answer. So yeah, to have like initial. What we tend to do is we'll have like an initial chat usually with people, and then we can let you know sort of if we can offer services from that point on.
My suggestion, Amy, would be to revise the slide, put in your contact details, and to us. We will try and get across to members. Please, if you're not a member yet, I think it's important to say, if you work with an institution that has more than 5-10 accountants, if you work with a university, please contact me. I'm happy to do institutional membership. We need to grow the membership database in Nigeria, and I'll be looking forward to your support as much as you can. We have actually gone 4 minutes past the time to finish, and I think it's time to close this webinar. I want to thank you so much, everyone, for coming, and thank you once again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Larry. To everybody, thank you, and have a good evening. Stay safe, keep well. Thanks all.
Thank you.